with the best father and son team on the internet. It's time for Homie and the Dude.
What is up, everyone? This is Homie and the Dude, the father and son TTRPG and MMA podcast, and the home of the best NPCs in the entire fucking universe. We are here today and honored to have Sam Comerford in our presence. Sam is a DM for Roleplaying and Roleplaying, and also the author of The Shitty Not Compendium, which is currently live on Kickstarter. Sam, how the fuck are you?
Great. Honestly, you are one of the first interviewers to ever pronounce my last name correctly. I don't know what that says about you, but everyone's like, "Oh, Connor."
I read, dude. I read. It's
Comerford.
syllables, and I read.
It should be. It's simple. It's simple. But you're like the first one. So thank you. So now I'm doing great. I'm doing fantastic. As you can probably see, it is in the wee hours of the morning, as my Irish grandma would say. But it is. I'm revved, ready to be here, and excited.
Hey, we are so honored to have you here. You are a big presence within the community and someone I've followed for a very long time, as I mentioned to you before we started recording. But I wanted to really get to know, obviously, you kind of hopped on Twitter and began kind of doing what you guys were doing with your podcast and everything around the 2020 mark. What inspired you to take those kind of first steps? What was like the jumping off point? What was like, you know what, it's time, we need to do it?
So in I think it was August of 2020, my friends and I decided, like, hey, I don't really have a project or anything going on, and I just want to do something. So I'm like, I reached out to my friends. I'm like, hey, you guys want to do a D&D podcast? And they're like, sure. And I didn't expect it to go anywhere. I didn't even make a Twitter account for it. I was like, we're recording a bunch of friends shooting the shit, playing D&D. But then my girlfriend, my very serious girlfriend, and I, we broke up. So I was like, all right, I got two options here. I can either like just spiral into like a post-relationship depression, which sucks, or I could throw myself wholeheartedly into this project. And now I am like married to this fucking podcast because it is all I do. Like, I have nothing else in my life going on right now besides like Dungeons and Dragons. And to be completely frank, I love it. This is great.
Dude, that's amazing. And I mean, we have a flavor of what it takes to put on certainly a family game, but we're also starting to think about doing a live stream and all the different components of that. So when you talk about you're all in, what are you doing as far as, editing? Of course, you're DMing and kind of getting prepared and all that, but give us a flavor of the whole package.
So for the first few months, I did everything. I edited, I marketed, I DM'd, I reached out to sponsors, I ran the Patreon. And my life was kind of falling apart because I'm like, hey, this is way too much for me to handle along with school. So I fortunately, the cast members are all great people, and they're like, hey, you look like you're not doing so hot. Can we help? And I'm like, please, thank you. I know I'm too prideful to ask, but thank you. So now I just I don't DM for this new season of the podcast. I'm actually a player, which is awesome. I edit because it's like it's kind of like my baby, and I'm a bit of a perfectionist in terms of that. Like, it's my way, and I like it done like this way when it's the episodes, the podcast. And then I run the Twitter, but then we've got people. My buddy Sean, who's actually an artist on Spotify, he makes some of the music for the podcast. And then my buddy Michael runs the Patreon, and then my two friends Alex and Audrey, they run the one-shots and the promotional material and whatnot. So it's been nice to kind of diffuse the responsibility a little bit, to kind of give myself more time to focus on the things that I'm good at and give people the things that I'm not so good at. I know they'd be much better at than I am, I guess.
Thanks for watching this episode. We really appreciate you supporting Homie and the Dude.
Please hit us with the Holy Trinity, like our Facebook page, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and follow us on Instagram. Just search @Homie and the Dude. It all really helps. Do you know what's interesting? it reminds me of an interview that was had with Quentin Tarantino a while ago. He talked about, you know, he never went to film school, and he actually did like what he called his own film school, where he made a movie for 6 years, and it was all of his own money, all of his own time. You know, he was the editor, the director, the lights person, you know, the cameraman, you know, doing everything that he basically could himself. And he said at the end of that process, he realized that the only true way to actually succeed within that is to give those kind of jobs to other people and just be able to truly just pass your vision on to them, and, you know, allow them to run with it, and almost like giving away some of that responsibility to other people. And it's something that we've learned. So we have a couple of like apprentices, I guess, people working for us who are like our social media person. We have an editor, we have a couple of artists and stuff like that. And it's something we've realized that as time has gone on, we've had to just relinquish some of those responsibilities. And me, so more than even you, because I'm like a lot of the creative driving force in of that. You know, I write our characters, you know, I have, you know, when it started, I was coming up with the graphics and thinking about this. And so when it then came to handing it to the social media person, I'm like, but this is the way you must do it. Like, just keep it okay. Good luck, like, you know, kind of thing. And it's one of those things where it relieves a lot of that pressure. But I see what you're saying, you know, and if that with the editing, for example, you said it's like your baby. It's hard to, you know, relinquish some of that stuff. I want to ask you kind of about your style of editing, because something I really like about what you do is this ambient music that kind of comes in out of nowhere in moments where you're not like, I would say not that I'm not expecting it, but it just appears, and suddenly I find myself enthralled in what's happening. What led to the choice of you doing that kind of soundtracking and music in this?
So I am completely self-taught, and I just use Audacity because, you know, it's free and I'm a college student. But it's interesting because the first episode, like the first couple episodes of the podcast, like season 1, sound like dog shit. I'm gonna be real honest, they don't sound very good. And my buddy told me, like, hey, the music is pretty abrupt. So I'm like, what do I do about that? So now I fade it in and I fade it out, just so it doesn't sound as abrupt, unless I want it to, right? Unless there's something spooky happening or something. And the reason I do that is kind of as if it's a horror movie, and it's not, but it's to kind of subconsciously get you in the mood, like the kind of anticipation of what's about to happen in like the next couple of seconds. So you're already primed for the next change of scenery or the next event. So that's kind of the reason why I kind of do that stylistic choice. And yeah, I don't like having super jarring music in the background. It's usually just kind of ambient, repetitive music that I can just, you know, cut and loop over and over and over again, so that your brain kind of tunes it out eventually. But when there is silence, you're like, wait, where's the music? So that's kind of why I do that. And it's especially the case in this new season, where there's a lot of it's a lot more guitar as opposed to synth. Because it's a Western campaign. So it's that's a lot more interesting to loop, because physical guitar is hard to kind of like cut and paste, as opposed to some synthetic music that I could just kind of find a breaking point and then reposition and whatnot.
It's something I've tried many times. I used to do our editing, and I've done editing for a very long time. And sound design is a really hard one for someone who, you know, I don't know music theory. I've never studied an instrument before. And that's a lie. I've studied like 3 or 4 instruments, but to no success in any way, shape, or form. Like with like a couple months of like twanging at some guitar strings and banging on some drums and shit, and then was like, okay, I'm done with that. But like having to kind of, like you said, with guitar and stuff, find correct harmonies, find the key, like, because if a song changes key, or like, you know, you go up or down an octave, and you then cut it and splice it together, and you can hear almost like that step almost happen in some cases, and it becomes one of those things that you really have to begin working out that fine tuning and finding like breaks and beats and stuff to be able to find those cuts, to be able to loop stuff. So I totally feel what you're saying. That's the guitar thing's a pain in the ass. I've been there.
Yeah, it's especially one thing I like doing is like I'm such a fucking sucker for leitmotifs, like having a piece of music that comes back as like a thematic element, right?
Yeah.
And what I love doing with that is bringing it down a half step to make it sharp, or an octave and a half step to make it low and sharp, to kind of like say like, oh, what's going on here? Something's not right. And I mean, I am by no means a musical expert. I was in like concert band. I played tuba, and then I was in a little rock band in high school, where I sang. Not well, mind you, but I did sing.
What was the band called? What was the band called?
It was called Mock. It was called Mock. Like this, like the speed. And our logo was much better than anything we ever created. I loved that logo so much. It was so slick, but nothing we ever made was great. But
is there any D&D? Is there any bands in any of your campaigns that you can plug in? Like here, and you're in the tavern tonight, and over there, and we've got the Mock band playing.
Oh my god, we should totally do that. Because the funny thing is that the band was made up of me, Michael, and Sean from the podcast. Mike plays guitar, and Sean is like just an absolute god on the drums. And one of my friends was on bass, and then my brother was actually on guitar. So it was like I've kept in contact with all these people. So if we want to do like a little reunion or something, we could probably scrap it together.
It's kind of like an idea. Like if an up and coming band, if you have a tavern scene and you like feature the band as like they're on stage, and then you play some of their music, dude, that's actually
if I was a band,
that's a great idea.
Call Critical Role and be like, yo, next time you're in a tavern, let us know, and we will send you a song, or we'll be there live to play. Like, dude, that's actually a wild guerrilla marketing avenue there.
That's great. Because have you guys ever heard of the podcast Welcome to Night Vale? Really,
I've heard of it, but I've not seen it.
It's cosmic horror like radio show, really funny and off the cuff. But what they do is they have this segment called The Weather, where you're expect like, oh, they go into the weather. No, it's just they play a song from like an indie artist, and like it's really cool. And like I think that's a great idea for a D&D thing. I mean, obviously I would probably have to keep it thematic and play country or bluegrass, both of which I despise. with a burning passion, but yeah, no, that's a great idea. That should totally be done.
It's an interesting one. So we've been playing around with music for the stream, but also we like to have music on the table because it adds mood to the table. So to what extent are you, or have you guys talked about, it'd be cool for us to actually have music during our sessions, whether it's in like
Are you doing live music? Yeah. Are you doing live music and then doing music post as well? Or how's that kind of working?
I just do music post, and then usually I'll just have Spotify running with like best Western instrumental soundtracks, Spotify playlist or whatever. I mean, I'm a sucker for Ennio Morricone. He does good shit. But that's essentially what we do. We don't do anything during the session in terms of like sound effects, besides maybe Alex getting a little overzealous and like making a weird growl as like some beast or something, which I love. I love editing that stuff to make it sound terrifying. But I mean, and then we joke about it. It's pretty. There's a lot of meta humor where we're like, oh, and the gun sounds like boom, pow, zing, which I can obviously add a sound effect in post, but then it wouldn't be like as funny as us going like boo boo pew.
Yeah.
But
dude, I would say like it's one of those things where there's keeping some of that rawness, but then also adding some of that post stuff. I also noticed do you alter your voice at points as well? Like when you're doing like, I think I noticed you were doing maybe an orc or something, and I swear the voice, because from hearing you talk now,
like
were you like fiddling with the effects like nodules as well?
Yes.
Is that something you mess around with?
When I was DMing, obviously I used a lot of voices, and I like to think I have a decent range, but I'm a tenor. I am very high pitched. Like I could do very like squeaky high stuff. I cannot for the life of me make my voice sound very intimidating and low. So what I had to do, especially if you've listened to season 1, Nicodemus has a very low sounding voice. No way in hell I could ever muster that. So I just cranked the audio down a bit after doing like a British aviator voice, which I think we mentioned in the Patreon. Like Alex said, like, oh, it's so fucking funny to me how I'll listen to you talk raw audio and I'll listen to a post sounds completely different and nobody knows you sound like an idiot before you add the drop down. And I love that stuff. I love kind of figuring out how to augment these like voices and whatnot, make like echoing and stuff like that, and like layering it with different pitches. I find super cool. Might be cheesy, probably is, but I mean that's the name of the game, so I don't know.
Dude, that's wild. Like the fact that you're investing, like the fact that you're, you know, at college studying not this, and you're investing so much time to learn how to do this stuff, like isn't a testament to how much you really, really care about what's going on right now.
Dude, also, like, we've just come up with one amazing idea, maybe for like the Shitty Compendium. I'm not sure, like, you know, promoting bands, but maybe this is another one. This might be beyond our like scope. I'm talking about us as Bodhi and I and you working together as a business. But
by all
what
means,
about this?
let me hear.
No, dude, check this out. How cool would it be fucking if you just had your own voice and you could send it through like I mean, it might already exist, like some sort of like audio thing that it could tweak into accents. So you wouldn't have to fucking do your own. You wouldn't have to do the English accent or the Irish accent or the Australian accent. It would just, you just like talk and
like an
just,
accent deep fake almost.
yeah,
That
would. Yeah, I mean, the technology seems like it could work. It's just like, you know, different accents on different parts of syllables, and I don't know, but it seems like that could be something.
that could be something. I mean, a lot of accents, though, I think, are dialect too. Like for Minnesotan, like I mean, Minnesotan is Midwestern, but I'm not gonna say like oh gee or oh yeah, mom makes a good hot plate, don't you know? Like I'm not gonna fucking say that. I live in Detroit. Like I say pop. That is as Midwestern as I get, or maybe some like weird R. But it's not to the extent of like because dialect changes wherever you go, and I know like a lot of people think like voice acting is just changing your voice to something wacky and then running with it, but it's so much more than that. And I learned that the hard way by kind of falling into this, because I love like impressions and shit. I find that so much fun, but it's difficult because you have to kind of, to make an entirely separate person, you have to not only address the funny little voice you've given them, but also how they talk, their cadence, their dialect, whether they use contractions or not, all sorts of shit that you have to be thinking of in a microsecond when you're saying something. It's a lot easier when you're given like a script, because you know they're saying this is how you talk, right? And then you can just kind of run with it. But in D&D, like that can get so complicated, especially when you're DMing, because you're like, all right, I have two characters, two NPCs that are talking to each other with radically different voices and different personalities. I have to kind of rectify that, and it can be so hard.
Right there for that. That is, as a DM, it's something that I have, you know. So I think one of my big things, that I not struggle with, but I find myself in those moments, I have to take a pause in between like each person responding to refine the voice in my head of the other person, and then I can go again. And it's like one of those weird things where you have to like you said, be able to not only have like the nuances of like what they talk. It might be like a repeated phrase. For example, like we have a two-headed gnomish character that is an artificer, and like and they make like crazy like mechanical tinkery stuff, and one of them basically says, "You know what I mean," at the end of every sentence that he says. And the other one says the last word of every sentence twice. So when I'm role-playing both of them talking back to each other, one of them will be like, "You know what I mean?" And the other one will be like, "I know what you mean." And like it like ends up getting really out of control like that. And talking to the players like that really does get like a little bit frazzling, which is why I think, I'm not sure if you get this, and we talked to Emil from Double DM podcast recently, and he basically said as well, he was like, after I DM, I like have like an hour, 2 hours of like crazy adrenaline hype. And then like I just bomb and like instantly, like, you know, for the next day, I'm just dead. And I was like, yeah, me too. Like it feels like my brain is just like turned up to the nth degree, and then like just short circuits. Like in the last hour of the session is just like, and I start like robot like tweaking out and just start, you know, fizzling out for the day. Do you find something similar?
Oh yeah, especially I don't find that for in-person games, I think the come down's a lot longer because it's like, you know, you could use your facial expressions. It's all like in person, you can have those little minutia present. But if it's over like a Discord call or something, and I like turn off the computer, it's just that blank screen, like I might have like some Radiohead play in the background. I'm like, man, I feel so fucking depressed right now. This sucks so much. But yeah, the post DM come down is real. It is like, I don't even know how. Yeah, you described it pretty well, because I mean it's just like this emptying of your mental faculties from just pretending to be so many different people, as well as the setting, and then doing math on top of that, and then herding cats. So it's a lot. It's a lot.
Dude, also, no, I was gonna say also it's just the creation of, you know, you're so locked in to the improvisation moment to moment that you like your brain is literally like redlining just to be able to pick up little things, cues, to play off of people, to make sure that, you know, along with all the mechanics behind the scenes, that is some serious like cognitive, you know, overload that, you know, we love doing it, and there's a serious like serotonin or whatever it is, dopamine like hit probably because of all that. But also just like physiologically, there's got to be a hit like beyond just like the emotional like dive. There's a physiological like, I've been on the treadmill for fucking 5 hours, I'm gonna fucking crash like one way or another. Well, if I put my brain through being on the treadmill for 5 hours, it's the same thing, right? Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's definitely mental exercise. You know, you are employing so many different parts of your brain to accomplish a task, and it's especially difficult. I'm not gonna say difficult, but it's especially kind of mentally strenuous, I guess, because you're doing it for other people, and there's that pressure to kind of perform and whatnot. So yeah,
I fully agree with that. No, I'd fully agree with that. Fully agree with that. And you know, it's one of those things that it takes time to get used to. And I don't know if you know, when you guys are recording your show, do you guys do it with cameras on when you're actually recording, or do you guys do no cameras? Like, what's your kind of setup when you do that?
Yeah, we want to start using cameras just because we've gotten a little bit of beefier setups, but as of up to this point, we've just been using Discord audio. So there's been times where we cut each other off and it doesn't sound natural, but I mean, that can be fixed in post. That is probably an easy 30% of my job when I'm editing, is just like cutting somebody out when they're like starting to speak and then somebody talks over them, right? Just to kind of keep it continuous. But yeah, we're going to try using video. I have no idea how that's going to work. We are going to see.
Do you know what I would say? So my point following that was going to be, for me personally, I did like theater, not theater school. I guess I did like some performing arts training for like 2 years, basically. And I cannot do what I do as a, like, I watch Matt Mercer and like Brenly Mulligan at times, and, you know, people like Abria Iyengar and, you know, all these incredible, like, legendary dungeon masters that sit down while they're DMing. And I'm like, I don't understand how you're not like, I'm on my feet, and typically I'm like, you know, and you freaking punch him in the face, and it's like, you know, and like, I'll be like, and he turns away from you to look at this person, and I'll like turn away from the table and begin talking like in this kind of direction, not looking at everyone. And it's like, for me, I just cannot DM without being really physical and like showing showing the scenes in ways. And I find like it's one of the things that I really, really love about it. But I also know, talking about like gassing out, it definitely, like, by the time we hit our halfway break, I am drenched in sweat. Like, my t-shirt is usually sweated through. I have to go make a t-shirt change because I've like sweated through some shit. And also I can't eat in my break because I'm so like head up and like stressed. I can't eat during the break because I'm like, I'm too focused, like I'm too like wired in.
It's like an athletic event.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
exactly.
Like, you're not going to eat a sandwich at halftime of the basketball game or the football game.
Exactly.
I mean, some people, I guess, will.
I was gonna say maybe. I was gonna say back in the day when like Jordan and that were playing, they're just smoking cigars and like whiskey in the back in halftime. Shit. Very different time. Very different time.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things I really struggle with. And you know what? I imagine when you guys get on the camera as well, because it's something that the moment you're recording something that's going to be put out there, it's different than just a home game. A home game is, there's moments where someone's like, oh, I'm running to the bathroom, pause for like a minute, guys, or like, keep going, I'll be back, kind of thing. Or, someone will do, drop something, or, there'll be a break where people will break character and be like, oh, did you see on this TV show? Oh, kind of thing. And that doesn't really happen when you're recording for a stream because you guys are locked in. You guys are a bit more like zoned in. It's a little bit of a different atmosphere, I imagine. But I also imagine when you guys get on video, you guys are going to be a lot more fun, a lot more animated. I imagine you and yourself will probably be a lot more animated. And I reckon your show will take a step up in terms of awesomeness and like
integration.
Yeah, like what's it called? Not integration.
You mean like
immersiveness? There we go.
Yeah.
Very immersive. I reckon it'll be very, very immersive because you guys are already so interesting. Seeing you guys, I think, will make it so much more immersive.
I would just to build on that, like part of my work that I do outside of Homie and the Dude is professional like leadership coaching and things like that. And here's my breakdown. I think there is a drop off, but not a lot between in person. Like if I'm with someone in person, let's say that's 100%. If I'm doing a video coaching session with them or a leadership program with them, I feel like the drop off is there because you don't have the behavioral cues as much. They're a little bit less obvious. The energy, the in space energy isn't quite as much as translatable on video. So I think there's a little bit of a drop off. But dude, from video to audio to just audio is not a lot of a drop off. Like if it's 100 in person and 90 virtual, it's probably like 85, 87 just audio. So and you know what? Your hearing is fucking turned up as well. So you're hearing cues, like your sensibility of your audio has been turned up because your visual is turned off in an audio podcast. So
Daredevil style.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like to think that especially in an audio podcast format, we do gain some advantages there because for a myriad of reasons. I'm going to use the example of, have you guys listened to the Magnus Archives? I've just been absolutely obsessed with it of late. It's a horror podcast. And it is some of the scariest shit I have ever consumed. It is terrifying. And I mean, I love scary movies and stuff, but I don't find them that scary because it doesn't leave anything up to the imagination. Whatever you can conjure in your head is like a scary image will 100 million times be scarier than whatever some schmuck puts up on the screen.
True.
So using that effect with audio, whenever I speak as Warren Morris, you don't imagine me as me anymore. You imagine me as some gunslinging cowboy. That's because you can't see me, right? You have to imagine the scene yourself and kind of put that into perspective. And granted, we do tend to break character and whatnot to reference fucking Pride and Prejudice or whatever people have decided to talk about in the moment. There's this kind of shift from seeing us less as distinct people, I guess, and more as podcasters or entities that you can put in different boxes, which is a little, I guess, dehumanizing, but not in a bad way. You can kind of weaponize that to your own advantage, but you could really mess with it when you use like just pitching your audio down a little bit to change characters and whatnot. Can make a world of difference, especially when you're DMing. It feels like totally different people. You can even like drag in someone to do the the Warlock D&D podcast has me record some of the lines for some of the characters that They send me like a script, and then I'll like record like a line or two. But the cool thing with just audio is you can do that, and some people won't even notice because you're just invested. And that's such a strength for audio. But I would agree there is a bit of a drop off.
Do you know what? Do you know what's interesting is that whole pros and cons, and it's something that I think the whole community is dealing with at the moment, because not only just within the podcasting zone and the content consumption part of our community, which is very much audio versus like video, and it's really interesting because some people really favor the video because they might be a little bit more animated, but like you said, there's that theater of the mind audio approach that really does enhance that kind of thing. And what I kind of wanted to ask you, and actually frame this less about podcasting, more about how you actually play the game, is, with things like Tailspire coming out, and you've got Corridor Crew making things with, Unreal Engine and stuff, and putting themselves in environments, and, all these crazy VTTs coming out. Do you feel like theater of the mind is losing its place within our community? Do you feel like it's something that we as a community need to work hard to keep alive and keep, the core of what this is about, which is just, this can be told with dice, paper, and pencils. You don't need, tokens and all this crazy shit. How do you feel about that? The new age versus the theater of mind kind of stuff?
I'd say absolutely not. Theater of the mind is not going anywhere anytime soon. And that is simply because it is so damn cheap. You get a bunch of kids just sitting around with a dice rolling app they got for free on their phone, a character sheet they typed up with some free information from classes, from D&D Beyond. You can play Dungeons and Dragons like that for free, 100% for free. You need no materials to play D&D. And I mean, you could just use Theater of the Mind, and it's so much fun. And granted, they're adding so many cool new technologies, like what's the one where it's like AR, where you get the glasses and you can see on the table like these moving minis and shit physically. That's insane. That's batshit crazy to me. But I mean, it'll never, in my opinion, like supplant the Theater of the Mind, because these physical kind of artifacts that you have for VTTs, augmented reality, minis, even dice. I know as sacrilegious as that is, they're never gonna supplant the real kind of feeling of imagination, because that's kind of the crux of really any tabletop game. You have to imagine yourself in a situation.
Yeah, so true. And I'm just like, as you're saying that, Sam, I'm thinking back, like this all started with storytelling all the way back to, like, I don't know if it's caveman days, but around the campfire, and there's the storyteller, there's the bard, there's the the shaman, all, and that's where we come from. And we still value the beautiful storyteller, the person that can captivate a room with their cadence, with their imagery, with their wording, all of that stuff. And so that is the essence of D&D. And it will, like, think about it this way. What would you fucking prefer? Brendan Lee Mulligan describing a scene to you, or you fucking seeing it on a visual, like, replication? Like, there's no comparison. Like, the human delivery always wins. I mean, unless we get to the point with technology that it is so similar to the shit that we do, which we're not even close to, then humans win in that storytelling side of things.
Yeah, and it's one of those things as well that, like you said, we've been doing this for years. And it's something that I often chuckle to myself, because, we've had the D&D resurgence in the last, like, 4 years after Stranger Things, kind of really, for some reason, like, that kicked everything off again.
Yeah.
And, like, it's interesting to me that, over that time, it's become so popular again. On top of, currently we have some of the greatest, I'm going to say very lightly, because I do disagree with my own statement I'm about to say, but some of the greatest games that are being created for, like, Xboxes and PlayStations and computers and all that are being created at the moment in terms of graphics wise and things like that. If we're talking about technology wise, our phones are like the greatest they've ever been. Our laptops are the most powerful we can make them. We've got virtual reality at this point. And yet somehow, out of a 80 TV show that we watched, everyone was like, I want to play the thing where the kids are dressed up in like fucking wizards costume and roll dice and shit. And it's funny that as society, we came back through to storytelling again and sitting around a table and sharing stories. It's one of those weird things that I think as humans, we just really gravitate to and we really like are absorbed by, which is why people don't mind sitting in the car and listening to a fucking podcast as they go to work, you know, and doing things like that. And I'm sure, you know, as a content consumer yourself, you know, I'm sure you agree with that notion. It's just, we love to hear stories, whether they're fantasy or horror or whatever, you know, it's just what we love.
Yeah. And I mean, you obviously you got to give like visual storytellers a lot of credit. I mean, I am a huge fan of like A24 films, that kind of style of visual storytelling where they just leave a lot kind of ambiguous in it's show don't tell, right? You can't do that with Dungeons and Dragons, and people might say that's a detriment. I would heavily disagree. It's an entirely different medium of this active storytelling, you know, like, because it's so great that this has kind of been developed, because it more or less diffuses the responsibility of needing any sort of plot or whatnot, or any sort of drive from a singular person. You can, as a DM, you can give somebody a setting, you can give them a plot hook. You can say, oh, your father was this ancient wizard and now he's come back from the grave. Who fucking cares? I don't care. But if that's my dad, if that's my character's dad, holy shit, my dad's back from the dead. I'm going to go do something about that because it's a story. It's exciting. I'm putting myself in the shoes of a character. And especially with storytelling in general, you empathize with characters. But with D&D, it's the next level, because you are the character. It's like first degree empathy or something like that. I don't even know if that's a thing, but it is now. I don't know.
Yeah. Do you know what? I fully agree with you. And it's why, you know, let's not get it twisted. Before movies were a thing, it was books. And, you know, before books, it was scrolls. And before scrolls, it was hide. And, you know, we've written characters and stories and, you know, these great tales. And, you know, if you go back to, you know, mythology, there's, you know, tales of heroes and this. And weirdly, now as we've come into the modern era, we've kind of understood a bit more of the minutiae of storytelling and stuff. And so, like you said, sitcom characters are relatable. You know, people are making, you know, Black Widow has, you know, a soft spot in her movie, you know, where she's, you know, down to earth, and people are like, oh, cool. Like, I can relate with Scarlett Johansson, you know, and it's one of those things, again, that, like you said, you know, as humans, we want to be able to connect with a plot. We want to go on the Fellowship's journey as they travel through Middle Earth. We want to be right there next to Frodo, telling him that, you know, Gollum he's fucking you over, you're fucked, you know, kind of thing. We want to be there. And I think, like you said, with D&D, it's that step further. It's even more immersive than games, because even with games, it's like movies are one thing, games is one step closer. And if that you control the actions of the character, you don't get to really make audio decisions. You don't really get to break out of whatever heavy plot line there is, unless it's an open world game. But even then, things like Skyrim and things like that are still very, you know, boxed in with what you can do. D&D, especially if you play sandbox, even more so than like a heavy campaign-driven campaign or like a setting, it's so free. You're so immersed. It's the, like you said, it's the truest form of empathy with a character, of connecting with something, with developing a world and growing it and building it and exploring. There's nothing more like real than I think D&D in terms of like immersing yourself into something. Or I say D&D, but tabletop games, you know, role-playing games, whether it be Vampire or Cthulhu or, you know, D&D or Pathfinder, whatever your version of that is. When you're in that moment, it's hard to describe anything that is equal to that in the world of content that exists.
I'm just thinking, like, this feels almost like, and this is the first time I thought about this, but tell me what you guys think about this. Is D&D a way to get people that normally would be hesitant about like acting or improv acting to actually do something like that? So you're sitting at a table, you're playing a game with your friends, but in actuality, when you look at this, when you strip it away, yes, there are confines to D&D. There's rules and there's mechanics and there's all this other stuff. But to improv, like to real improv, there's also mechanics. There's a framework of the scene. Okay, this is the scene. This is the topic. Fucking go, right? And that's all happening. To some extent, they are related. Like that whole scene of.
Are you saying at Italia Conti in London they should be running D&D sessions for their level 2 graduates? Yeah, like, do you know? I actually love that. Because I had an improv teacher. If she had been like, "Yo, we're gonna do improv for like we have a 3-hour class. We're gonna do like an hour of like actual improv and then 2 hours of D&D." Holy shit! I would probably be a lot better at it than I am now, but also like in terms of improv and like reaching that state over long extended periods of time, because you can do an improv scene that, you know, lasts maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but you're not sat at a table for hours and hours having to force yourself to continually put yourself in that state. I think I would have been better at improv than I am now if I had done that for years. Maybe one for acting teachers who are listening to consider. And one that maybe would inspire more people to take acting.
Yeah, I didn't really think of the connection, but it feels like it's there.
Yeah,
I have a question for you in terms of, you know, you've gone from, you know, higher like fantasy, you know, kind of campaign with your Ring Bearers Chronicles to now this Western, you know, with your Sinner Saga. What was your kind of reasoning for hopping genres and transferring to something else? And do you think for your next campaign, I know you're very much in the early stages of this one, but do you think you'll hop genre again? Do you think that will be a trend across your campaigns?
most definitely. I think that really just making them distinct, it lends a lot of credence to kind of like just what you're listening to. I mean, we've taken a lot of inspiration from shows like Dimension 20, The Adventure Zone. They're very different between campaigns. And I love that. I think that's so much fun to have these different kind of experiences in these different worlds. And I mean, particularly like for Westerns, I love Westerns so much. I cannot stress it enough. That is probably my favorite genre of film. And the just kind of doing like shifting to this, I was super excited. It's a ton of fun. But then, I mean, next season, I don't even know if we're gonna play D&D. We might do like Monster of the Week in space. I don't know. Bounty, maybe some bounty hunter kind of shit. That's a great idea. I might actually write that one down.
Dude, there's so many that are fun.
Dude, like the Boba Fett story, but from your guys' angle, that would be fucking.
Oh, that could be cool.
I feel that, dude. That's a group of bounty hunters that get together. That sounds, or even a group of bounty hunters that get together who are competing against one another, but have to come together as a team to work together.
Yeah.
Though at the end of it, one of them gets the fucking, do you know what I mean? Like
kind of like the Nightcrawler, like you're competing against each other, but then maybe the build on Nightcrawlers, let's work together to be like the baddest Nightcrawlers out there. And then at the end, I don't know.
That's hot. That's hot. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Nice. I like it. I like it.
So that's interesting, you know, and first of all, Westerns are great, you know, and you can look at everything from the old school Westerns all the way through to, you know, the modern like Django Unchained that are being released these days, and like, you know, what's it called, like Undisputed 7 or whatever, the Chris Pratt one that they did recently and shit.
Oh, Magnificent 7.
Right? Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it. There we go. And you know, there's such a plethora of content to choose from there, and references to pull on. And something that I wanted to ask you is, you know, you've been a DM. You're not a DM for this season, but you have been a DM. A saying I heard was a DM is only as good as their obscure references that they base things on. Is that something that you would agree with, and something that you like you would kind of pull on as well and agree with?
Yes, I would most definitely. That is a really good turn of phrase. Yeah, I think because I had Alex do some homework and watch some Westerns because he's seen a few. Like, and in terms of modern Westerns, like the genre itself, you might think it's kind of constricted to like, you know, post-Civil War like Western territory, but that's not true. because there's neo-Western, like No Country for Old Men. That's a neo-Western. We're talking Logan is technically a Western. The Mandalorian is a space Western. The genre is great because what it is so you boil it down to its bare bones. You strip away like the Civil War discourse and whatever, and you get very simple stories of redemption or revenge, and you get very nuanced characters in them. And you get them, and their interactions with each other are very complex. And that is what kind of drives these films. And I mean, of course, there's some awesome action set pieces, and you've got like a duel that lasts, like, I mean, probably my favorite scene in film is the ending to The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. And if you haven't seen it, spoilers, so I guess skip 5 seconds. But the ending is just, it is 6 minutes of 3 guys staring at each other. 6 minutes. But what they do is the score is fantastic. And you are at the edge of your seat just waiting for these 3 people who you've seen for the past 3 hours try to kill each other, finally at this graveyard. And it is ecstatic. It is the coolest shit ever. And I can't stress enough how cool it is for a culmination of characters versus a culmination of plot. I much prefer that to the other.
Amazing.
I was just going to say, like, thinking about The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Clint Eastwood effectively has made a career on space, on like beats, right? Like, if you think about some of his most iconic lines that he's delivered,
it's also that close-up cut, that like look as he turns. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's the beat isn't just in the music, it's also in the filmmaking and the style at which the camera's being used as well.
And the music as well. Yeah, exactly. So there's an element of interesting cinematography, acting, voice delivery, all of that creates that mood that's pretty cool, that you don't need a lot going on. Like the last scene of The Good, and the Bad, and the Ugly, there's not a lot of like tremendous dialogue or fucking
CGI or fucking,
there's a lot of, there's close-ups, there's, a little bit of, and you're feeling the emotion and the tension as the whole thing unfolds. It's a really, really, really good example. Really nice example.
And do you know what? I wanted to ask you, based on all this Western stuff, is there a point in this campaign at which it is revealed to you guys as characters that you are indeed robots in a world where people come and come and like use you to get out their sins and like
It's not a bit.
I guarantee you, Alex will make at least one Westward reference in this campaign. I would bet money on that. But I mean, we already have fucking robots in it, kind of. So yeah, I think I totally could see that at least being kind of a twist. Oh, that one hasn't come out yet. No, so then I'll wait for that to reveal itself. But there's a weird connection that was kind of brought up between the first season and the second season.
Oh,
so yeah, it is weird. The mind of Sean Grinzel is an enigma. I will just say that much. It is. I don't know what goes on in there.
This is what your fans really. I mean, they love to see like little like How I Met Your Mother is great at the following season will reference a conversation that happened 1 season or 2 seasons before. But the fans, they love, like the super geek fans love that shit, and to have those kind of references going back and forth is super cool.
I mean, there's a moment in Critical Role Campaign 2, if I remember correctly, where they meet Keyleth's mother, I believe, for the first time. They never met her in Campaign 1, but they meet her for the first time in Campaign 2 as different characters. And it's this moment where everyone went nuts. I remember the stream just going off the fucking chain. I remember like the cast just being like, what the fuck? And like everyone just going nuts. And it was one of those moments where, they've drawn a line across 2 campaigns and it's made this super deep kind of lore, and it's almost like intersected. I really like that. I think that's really, really awesome. I wanted to kind of segue now into something a little bit different and ask you a question to kind of lead up what we'll lead into. But I want to ask you to start off with, can you give me the exact formula, or maybe the formula minus the secret sauce to writing a shitty idea post on Twitter? What is your like, okay, so today I'm going to do a class and I'm going to do this. Like, what's the secret formula? You can leave out the secret sauce if there is secret sauce, because obviously we don't want anyone else to capture the magic.
So I hate to be a Disney mentor here, but there is no secret sauce. The secret sauce is love. No, but seriously,
Dude. All right, and that's the end of the podcast. Great seeing you, Sam. Fucking out of here.
So my process is I am an absolute ADHD gremlin. That is a really kind of affected my life previously for the worse, when I didn't know what the hell was going on up in the big old Chromodome. But then shift to now, Twitter is built for ADHD people. Dear Lord, it is our sanctum, because it's these little bite-sized pieces of information you can just churn out. And so what I do is I will usually just in the morning, it's really good after I work out, because then you got the endorphins going. What I do is I put on like a soundtrack to a movie or something. It might be like The Social Network or some fast jazz or something, just to really kind of stimulate my brain. And then I write a shitty idea. And I guarantee you, first one, never good. It's always just horrible. But that's why shitty can mean whatever I want, because that way I can have anything fall into those parameters and people won't give me shit for it. But the first one, it'd be like a goblin who wears pants. It's not a good character idea. I probably wouldn't pay that. I'd play a goblin with all of their clothes, most likely. But then the way my brain kind of works is that goblin with pants, I'm like, pants, armor artificer. My mind kind of starts churning out. Like you can see the steam coming out of my ears, per se. And then the next idea is a little bit better. The next one's a little bit better than that one. And it kind of, in the span of about 15 minutes, I probably make around 10 ideas if I set aside that time at the beginning of the day. And then I post them throughout the day. So it's not like I just have inspiration that just strikes me. Well, that rarely that does happen. But usually I force myself to kind of be like, all right, be creative, you son of a bitch. Let's go. Come on. And then I just kind of pump them out. I don't really know how to describe it. They just kind of like this is like my ultimate kind of coalescing of my brain functions and how my mind works, I guess. Because like a D&D, and especially this like ADHD bite-sized version of it is just perfect, I guess, for just the way my brain works. So I'm like, all right, let's do it. Let's put out like 10 ideas. And then I'll make some memes, I guess, from like templates on Reddit or something. But those aren't fun. I mean, they might get more likes just because people like memes. But I love the shitty ideas more than I like the memes. Because, you know, I mean, they're, for the most part, original. And I mean, I say that with a grain of salt because nothing really is anymore. You know, somebody's done it before. Let's be real honest. But yeah, that's my process. I can't really give any sort of secret thing.
Do you know what's interesting that I really like about what you said? And I actually want to ask you a little bit about your workout and stuff, because though it seems like a minor thing, I feel like there's two types of creatives in the world, or there's a couple of different types of creatives, and there's two that I can definitely like from what we're talking about now. There's often the like what I'd call like the damaged creative, or like the injured creative that is like, you know, I create from my suffering. And like my girlfriend, bro, it's Adele. My boyfriend broke up with me, so I wrote another album. And you know, it's that basically, and it's one of those things where people will often, you know, create, you know, whether it be using, you know, some drugs in some ways, like the Beatles, or you know, they'll create through the pain or stuff like that. But there's this other breed of creatives, and it sounds very much like you fit into this other breed of creatives that, you know, I put people like, sadly, as much as, you know, I'm slowly becoming not a fan of this person much at this point at all. Joe Rogan, in of themselves, though he is, you know, whatever personality wise, he works really hard and creatively, he sees it as a science as opposed to something that kind of happens magically through inspiration. Sees it as like, if you work out, you're releasing endorphins and serotonin, which allows you to be more creative anyway. Also, just by exercising and whatnot, you're in a happier headspace. So it means that, again, you're in a better state of mind to do that. Then the fact that you mentioned, you're listening to some like jazz and some stuff like that to like really stimulate your mind and things like that to get you working and get the cogs kind of turning. That kind of mentality, and I just want to share this with you, is not something that I know. I've met a lot of creatives. Not many of them are thinking like that, in that kind of way of like, it's a science. I know that if I do this and I do this, then when I sit down at the piece of paper, it's going to be easier for me. And a lot of people don't do it like that. So I want to ask you, what kind of a workout are you doing? Are you doing like a lot of high cardio? Are you doing like weights? What type of jazz are you listening to? Are we talking like 20s jazz? Are we talking more like R&B jazz of the 90s? Like, what kind of shit are you listening to? Talk us through that kind of process that gets you to being creative.
Yeah, so I kind of want to preface this with, I come from this kind of, my high school years sucked so bad. I despised high school because I didn't know what I needed to make my brain work. I was being put through these classes that were hard for me because I was being forced to learn in a way that I couldn't, I couldn't really kind of mesh with the way that kind of education was presented to me. But now
that's familiar to me as well. I'm dyslexic, so I had a very similar upbringing that I struggled with school until I kind of found my rhythm. So I fully understand that. Sorry.
Well, yeah, you have to find your rhythm, and for me, it's the absence of things that would not necessarily distract me, but the absence of things that would impair me. Like I don't drink, I do drugs. I just give up pop and sugar because I guess I'm some sort of masochist. But it's like, I know I need to have a clear head in order to be creative. And exercising and music has really kind of emerged as two ways that I really need to kind of activate my brain per se. And so for exercise, what I usually do is I do something like, I guess it's kind of like baby CrossFit, I guess. It's like strength and then cardio. And then Sundays I'll box. And I love boxing. It's probably my favorite way to work out. Just absolutely just beating the shit out of a bag. Usually I don't like to hit other people just because, I don't like people to be angry at me or anything like that. But just slamming a bag and just like, I'll have like the Doom Eternal soundtrack on and just enter this like berserk state. That is so good for me. Like that relieves so much of my stress. And then I'll just, come back to wherever I am. I probably won't even shower. I'll probably just be sitting in my own sweat while I'm making these ideas because I'm like in the zone still. And I love soundtracks. That is, my Spotify Wrapped was like, dude, you listen to way too many soundtracks. You got to listen to real music. But Hans Zimmer, like Ennio Morricone, we're talking Lorne Balfe, Johan Johansson, rest in peace. All sorts of people who make these instrumentals. Those put my mind to work like nothing else. And specifically, what are some songs I really use? Like the Social Network soundtrack. One, brilliant film. Two, is by Trent Reznor from Nine Inch Nails and Atticus Ross. Yeah, and it's this really cool, like synthy sounding soundtrack that really draws from these like unique, like kind of rhythms and like these thrummings from like some like technological thing, and it like just shows progress, and it really it makes my brain do the happy dance because I'm like, oh, okay, let's do the thing. And then for jazz, the Cowboy Bebop soundtrack is like second to none. You get those horns in there. Come on. And then I love the big band arrangement of Caravan from Whiplash with like the drum solo at the end, because then my mind's like, the drum solo is like, boo, I'm like, oh, okay. And then like I guess kind of describe my brain as like a little gremlin. You gotta feed the gremlin his little food, whether it be music or working out. And yeah, I just kind of found the process to feed my gremlin, I guess, and that's that.
Do you know what? That's fucking great way to describe it. Like that's an awesome way to describe it is feeding your gremlin. And a couple of things I just wanted to talk about through that are really cool that we need to touch on a couple of these
I've
things.
got one as well.
Okay. We need to touch on boxing because we do MMA and boxing. That's like our thing. We need to touch on boxing in a minute. But I also just want to touch on horns and jazz music, and specifically horns in jazz music. I was literally saying to my partner last night, I was like, look, as far as music goes, there is for me two instruments. I said three, but mainly two instruments for me that like it's not that I can feel them. I understand what they're saying. Like I legitimately understand the words that the instrument is speaking to me. I said, that's electric guitar. I said, it's horns and it's piano. Piano less so than horns and electric guitar for me. But I would say electric guitar and horns are just one of those things that if you rip a bit of horns in a jazz song, it doesn't matter. Like I'm instantly just like tuned in. It like you said, it's one of those things that just elevates the human condition and brings you up in a way that is so hard to explain. And again, I feel the same thing when you hear a lick on a guitar. You hear like a Hendrix lick, or you hear like a John Frusciante riff or something, you know, and you're like, oh dear
Yeah.
God, like something inside of me is just like, oh yeah. So I fully feel you on the horns thing and like getting some like really nice jazz, because again, for me, Tom knows this, when I read books, I have to have music on to help me like focus. When I'm writing, I have to have music on when I'm writing. I have to have music on when I'm like creating. It's literally my creative process. When I was doing my exams at school, I was one of the few kids I like fought my like school so that I could have music during my exam and stuff like that, and was like really adamant about that stuff. So I fully agree with you that music is, if anyone hasn't tried music to help you create or to influence creation or drive creation or even energize creation, I fully recommend music as something to do that.
Yeah.
And it's key to that. In terms of boxing,
yes,
massive release, obviously, of energy. I would, put it in the realms of, for some people like street dance, martial arts, they're like singing in public, things like that, where people are like getting out that energy and really like letting out something from within them. How did you find boxing, and why out of all of the martial arts did you choose the gloves and pads? What got you to the sweet science?
so I'd like to preface this by saying I watch basically no sports. So if you throw names at me besides like Mayweather or like Mike Tyson, I'm gonna be like, huh? But so why boxing? When I was a kid, I did like 5 or 6 years of karate and jujitsu. And I was all right. I wasn't like good or anything. And back then, my body was kind of built for running. I ran a lot of that was my thing in high school. I ran half marathons. I ran cross country. But then my feet started to fall apart because now I have plantar fasciitis and I need insoles at all times, which sucks bad because I enjoy a bit of running, but now I really can't. So then I was sitting there, sophomore year of high school, probably my lowest point in my life, and I wasn't working out. I felt like piece of shit on the stick. And my mom, who's a fucking machine, by the way. I'm scared of my mom. She works out more than I do. She's like, listen, you and I are working out. There's a kickboxing gym that just opened. I'm like, Mom, and she's like, no, come on, we're doing this. So we went to this kickboxing gym run by this like 4'6" little Russian guy who was the most muscular man I've ever seen. And it really kind of got me into it. And it wasn't like strictly boxing. It was like this. It was called 9 round, and it was like these little 9 rounds of like it was just like 3 second, like not 3 second, Jesus, that'd be quick. 3-minute rounds where you would just do a repetitive exercise, like speed bag or like just hooks or whatever, and you would just move around the bags. But then I went to title for a bit, title boxing. And that was great. I really loved Title. Because the trainers were hardcore as fucking hell. Uh, and I love, like, I mean, my favorite punch, probably a very common choice, is like the right hook. The right hook just feels so powerful. Like you feel like I like just releasing like a guttural scream as I just land that thing into the bag. That feeling is second to none. But then the pandemic hit and I couldn't go to Title anymore. I was like, this sucks. So then my mom and I found like this weird CrossFit-esque gym that I'm still at today. That's really cool. Yeah. And then over the summer, I mean, I'm a gig worker, you know, I can't really stay at one place for too long. But I did landscaping over the summer. And I think the only thing that I've ever found comparable to boxing in terms of just physical release is when they would hand me an axe and just tell me, we need you to rip out that tree. And I'm like, oh, let's go. This is the best. Just absolutely tearing it apart. But yeah, boxing, I think that is easily my favorite way to work out for sure.
Amazing.
You know what I love about this conversation, and especially that you two guys are in your, you're in your early to mid 20s, Sam, I'm assuming.
21.
Yeah, and Bodhi's the same. Is that you're figuring out, like it's taken me probably a longer progression in my life journey to get to a place where you're starting to unlock things. So you call it your, you know, feeding your gremlins or trying to figure out your gremlins. It's a super, super important journey to have of, you know, if you look at this body, including the mind and all the physical aspects of it, it's kind of like a machine. It's kind of like this, you know, this finite, you know, problem solving equation. And our job, or one of our jobs, is to figure out how to optimize that, right? So that we can get the most out of it. And that is a journey. Like you know, at times we're completely failing, and especially like in our 20s, those failures can be really, really severe, where we're, you know, we haven't figured it out. And what might be like what should be a 15-minute crash turns into a 3-week crash because I just couldn't cope with it. And what you're doing is slowly, like, you know, adjusting your system so that you can build the resilience to have this machine work more optimally. And I love that you guys are talking about that, because this has been a huge thing for me. And I feel like my machine at this point, I know it well. I know it really well. And I can go day after day after day with a certain amount of a standard that allows the output to be at a 9, at a 9.5. My bad days are an 8.5, you know, whereas my bad days before, where I was crawling on the ground for a couple of weeks and I couldn't figure it out. And I was beating myself up because of it, because I felt like I should be smarter than this. I should be able to figure this fucking shit out. So there's an element of like being kind to ourselves during the journey, but also understanding that that's really part of what our job is here. Because I know, like, for instance, my dad, I don't think ever had that kind of perspective, that kind of reflection on, like, you know, he just was like stuck in this loop for fucking 75 years, you know, and there wasn't a lot of progression that I could see. And there's a lot of people that are in that camp, you know?
Yeah, those are some of the wisest words I've heard in a long time, because my experience is very directly tied to that. This might get a little serious, so apologies.
No, please do. No, please do.
So you say that like I've like kind of figured out where I am. I mean, I haven't, but I'm definitely much further along than I was, and that's all that kind of matters. You know, it's a journey before a destination. But back in high school, sophomore year was the worst year of my life without a singular doubt. I was incredibly depressed. I attempted mid-December of 2016, and my life was garbage. And it really, looking back, it wasn't. You know, I had everything I could possibly want. I was going to a great school, but it was just, I didn't know who I remotely was. I didn't know how to make myself work, you know, because I'd only been given things that didn't fit with my puzzle piece, I guess. And that felt awful, because I felt like I was some dumb idiot person for not being able to conform to like the standards and expectations and the ways of thinking of other people who have no idea how I work, you know? And that was, and I mean, I've gone to therapy and whatnot. Highly recommended, by the way. Go to therapy. Great experience. And it's just, I kind of came to appreciate that life is more than just being useful. It's more than just being something, you know? You have to kind of, and when you talk about optimizing yourself, it's not just about being useful and performing well at your job. It's about performing well to yourself, right? That introspection and seeing who you are, where you've come from, and taking that all into account when you think of how to even respond to somebody in the most inane shit is so important. Because then you get people who haven't, I'm not gonna say haven't figured it out, but haven't had the chance to figure it out. People who've been stuck in that loop of like, oh, I'm a man, or oh, I'm a woman, and this is the way my life is. This is the way X, Y, and Z expects me to be. Fuck that shit, man. You don't be what people expect you to be. Be what you expect you to be. Be what you are, you know? And that is such a tough thing to find out. It is probably the hardest discovery I've ever had to make in my life. And I have barely chipped away the surface of that. But it's, you know, it's a journey. It's a journey before it's a destination. And those are some incredibly wise words.
Do you know what, as well? Like, first of all, you said 2016, same year as me. I also tried to commit in 2016. It was a really rough year for me as well, actually. And it was in my, it would have been my sophomore, no, not my sophomore. It would have been my my junior year of high school was the one for me. And it was a really hard year for me. I really struggled, and it was that same thing of not knowing who I was. And I think, actually, I'll be honest, it wasn't that I didn't know who I was. I knew who I was, and it had been that I'd been lying to myself and to everyone else for so long about who I was, that when I finally wanted to be me and was trying to search to find that real core me, there was so little of it left that I had lost so much of the essence of who I am now sat in front of you, and like who the person that I've refound pretty much over the last 5-6 years of my life. You know, it takes time. It really does. And it's something that if you don't start working on, it will never come to you as well. Like I was a jock, and I was an asshole in college, in high school. I was not a great person, and I really disliked who I was back then. And it took me a long time to realize that, you know, that's not who I am. That's not what I want to be. And it's not what people deserve from me, and it's not what I deserve from myself. I'm better than that, and I deserve to be better than that, and I can be better than that. And I think, like you said, it's one of those things that it is a journey, and you begin to chip away at understanding yourself. You know, I'm 22, 23, turning 24 literally later this month, and I would say thank you. And you know, I have worked out a bit more about myself. I'm nowhere near as, like, you know, worried about my image and stuff like that. I'm a lot more confident about myself, but I still have a lot of downfalls. I have a minor drug addiction that I deal with. You know, I have some other bits and bobs that I deal with. I have some demons that I battle on the side of this stuff. And I'm still working myself out to get to a point where I can be the full version of myself, closer to, you know, what Tom has been able to achieve across his life. And it's something that, you know, and you know, we talk highly of this, and Tom took many years of his life. For people that don't know, like, we do father and son stuff, which is great. We look like, you know, oh, we're happy father and son. But up until I was 16, we hated each other. We were not friends. We did not get along. We could not be in the same room for more than a day together. There were times where we would go weeks without speaking to each other. It was an awful relationship. And until you started looking at yourself and meditating and setting an example for me to look inwards, I then started looking inwards. And we both came to a place where we realized it was just all bullshit, all superficial and all crap. And we managed to find that place where we can do this together now, where we are happy to be father and son. And like you said, to find that journey, to find out how you operate, how you do best, and things like that. And dude, I'm 24, and I have, for example, my two best friends who I know for a fact you're not going to watch this video, so I don't mind saying this. But they are a lot further behind me in terms of discovering who they are. You know, one of them is just dropped out of university for the first time and started his second course at university because he's struggling to find out what he wants. The other one has been trying to work out how to be an actor for a while and is really just struggling with that as well. I'm further than them, but then the next person, for example, yourself or someone else down the line, is further than me. And so, like you said, it is a journey, and it's one of those ones that we just have to keep chugging along and knowing that as long as we're working towards it, things are going to keep getting better. Life is going to get easier, and life is going to be more happy for you in the long run if you begin working on yourself. And it's not a fun process, and it takes a fucking long time, but it's worth it. It's super worth it.
Yeah, I am of the school of thought that wisdom is simply the knowledge we gain from pain. And really, that it's a lot easier to be wise when you're old, because I mean, you just got a longer landing strip, you know. And I was the same way with my dad. I didn't hate him, but he was busy. He was really distant, you know. I barely talked to him about anything, really. I didn't know him. And I mean, I was really close to my mom, but my dad, that was not the case. But I don't know what changed. I think it was because we had to stay home for the pandemic. But now my dad's dope. He's like, he helps me out with like the Twitter and whatnot. He gives me ideas for like the podcast. He's super supportive of all this like nerdy shit, which I would, if you've gone back 5 years and told me that, I would have laughed in your face. But he's just, it's like we've both grown into this relationship with each other. And like, I love him so much now. And it's crazy how this like kind of relationship just sprouted from some experience that was really painful, you know. I think weirdly, I know this is a weird thing to say, but the pandemic brought me really close with my family when I was living with them, which I know has not been the case for a lot of people. I think I lucked out severely there. But yeah, like my brother, who I haven't seen in a while now because he's at college, we've gotten very close as of late. And I think it's just as time kind of progresses, you know, you just kind of figure out how to trim off the excess, I guess, especially in relationships, and figure out what really matters, you know. Like I figured out like, hey, I don't want to be in this place where my dad and I rarely talk about anything, you know. And now he'll send me shitty ideas that he likes for me to post. And it's great. He hasn't even played, he's played D&D once, and yet he knows more about classes than any newbie ever would. It's so cool. Oh shit, I don't have it. But if you've been following me for a while, you might have seen the Infinity Gauntlet, which is the Thanos glove with like the dice on it. Where, like, if you press it, they glow. He made that for me as a present. Dude, it's like the coolest shit ever. And like, I don't know. It's just broadening your horizons with time is just like it's very difficult, but it's like opening this like cocoon, but you're screaming the whole time. Dear Lord, you're screaming the whole fucking time. but once you open, you're a beautiful butterfly. You don't have to scream anymore. Maybe a little bit, but then you spread your wings.
Yeah, I fully agree with that, and I think, you know, it's essential that, you know, you can begin to work on some of that stuff and grow as a person, because it really does develop life into something that's a lot more beautiful. And, you know, that from what it sounds like, you and your dad are, you know, bonding. And something else about the pandemic, like shit, the one thing that I am bummed out about most is, like, I know there's been really shitty situations. Like, don't get me wrong, there's been death across the world, and families have been torn asunder, you know, from, you know, each other, and from, you know, loved ones and partners and relationships and everything. But if we can find the good nuggets in this time that have been the beneficial things that we have had, like me and my girlfriend got, you know, nearly a year where we didn't have to work really because of English furlough, and we could literally live together and spend time together and, you know, make forts to watch movies in the lounge, you know, and, you know, go for crazy long walks and, you know, actually like really indulge in spending time together and not have to work for a little bit. And I think it's one of those things where if you can find a benefit out of this pandemic, it's something that is also really, really good. And, you know, whatever that might be, if it's like, oh, well, you know, in your country, you can only visit one person, you know, maybe you and your best friend suddenly become a lot freaking closer because you're the only two people that can see each other, you know, and it's one of those things that at the end of all of this, try and look back on something good and it will feel a lot better than the shit stuff that we have been encountering over the last 2-3 years. And it has been a shit show. It really, really has. And
yeah, you're telling me. I live in America.
I was gonna say you guys in America are truly truly boned.
We say that as Americans, by the way.
I was gonna say, yeah, saying that as Americans.
Oh
as
my
God. Talking about shitty, I think this is a great place to pivot towards your beautiful, beautiful Kickstarter campaign that was funded an amazing. Was it 6 hours or 6 days?
6 hours.
6 hours. I was gonna say I knew it was one of the two. I couldn't remember off the top of my head. 6 hours. Absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely amazing. And it is called the Shitty Knot Compendium. There we go.
Yes.
The Shitty Knot Compendium, which I absolutely love. I've read a little bit about it and I've like had a little bit of a look at it and whatnot. Can you give the people who are listening a little bit of a breakdown about what it is, what it was inspired by, and what they can hope to find if they go and back this? With 20 days left to back, guys. So you still got some time to go grab your own version and all that kind of stuff. Help get to stretch goals, all that good shit as well.
Yeah. I love people throwing money at me, so by all means, please. But I should, yeah, I'd love to describe it. So what essentially happened was probably around April, people started saying like, oh, you should have a book of all these fun little ideas. And I'm like, maybe. But my dad's like, you idiot, you could make money doing this. And I'm like, what? So and then I what I was originally planning on doing is just copy and pasting these ideas, you know, just having like this big list of all of them. I'm like, that's not fun, you know, just having ideas. So what I did is I added this kind of creative supplement. And what I really have kind of the selling point of this book is that there are no stat blocks, none. There's no numbers, there's no math. And that might seem like a detriment. Maybe it is. I don't know. But when you are in possession of this book, you will have ideas with no attachments. They are yours to do whatever you'd like with. So with, say, the case of the shitty items, there's like 50 of them in there. What I have, like, you might be thinking, holy shit, this item is so broken. This is an artifact. Make it an artifact then, man. I don't care. If this is your responsibility now. But it is, these are things that you can mold and create whatever you'd like with them. Just spreading your wings and just flying with, like, maybe I don't want this to be a cleric. Maybe it should be a rogue instead. Man, go for it. This book is yours now. You own the book. Congrats. But the gist of it's a creative supplement that is inspiration based as opposed to mechanics based. Because I mean, I've seen like a ton of books, and I'm not shitting on them by any means. It takes a lot of work to write a mechanically sound D&D supplement, play testing and all sorts of stuff. I do not envy that, but you just kind of attacking it from the creative side, where like I have all these intros for every single thing. Like every single class has one. Every single like for the items, for the like monsters, plot hooks, even. I have like these intro questions, like what makes your barbarian, like is your barbarian's rage anger, or is it focus? Is it fear based? Like how to build a character with traits as opposed to with mechanics. And I kind of like really extrapolated on that. And I mean, obviously it's comedic based, so I swear a bunch of it because that's my vernacular. And try not to shit talk Ranger now that's been updated and whatnot. But yeah, it's a fun time. It's a fun time. You should totally back it. I think coming from my expert and non-biased opinion.
Do you know what? It sounds really, really creative, and it's interesting how you've kind of talked about it. So, I'm not sure if you've seen kind of what Tom and I do in terms of supplements. We make NPC characters, and along with the NPC characters, you get like a backstory. So if you want to like throw in some plot hooks, you can do. You also get, as well as like their stat blocks and stuff like that. You also do get special features that are almost like you taking the abilities from the stat block and making them more general, so that they can be adapted into whatever they want to be. And something that I really like that you said, it's something that we very much do here. It's the way that I create most of our NPCs, and the way that we work about it is we don't create the stat blocks first. We never go stat blocks first, because typically the method at which we've done it, just by pure chances, I didn't know how to create stat blocks when I first started making NPCs. So I was just writing character profiles, basically. Then when we met the gentleman who helps us make stat blocks called Tony, even though I know how to make stat blocks now, Tony is much more creative with adapting the ideas that I have into mechanics that actually function really well. I always start with, what do they look like? What is their mannerisms? Like, how do they operate? What's their kind of thing? What's their weakness? Where do they move around in this kind of place? What about them? Where are they in this world? That kind of stuff. And, begin to build on all of that. Once we've got all of that, then we kind of send it to our artist. And then actually, once we've got the art back, we send my description and the art to our stat block guy. And at that point, the stat block gets made. And it's one of those things where I almost feel like we have to go through that process, because the ideas and the stuff that we come out with is so much more interesting and fun than if we had gone, we'll add, a freaking, what's called a cunning action to this character because, they're dexterous or something. That's cool. Like something like that. And it doesn't end up being as interesting, as in depth, I think, as we've found.
I also think it's complementary, I think, with the stuff that you're doing and the stuff that we're doing, is that it is agnostic to any TTRPG, right? You can just plug it in, and you can sort of take out or remove or not use our stat blocks and use that NPC wherever. And the same sounds like the same thing with your ideas. They don't have to be D&D driven. They can be driven across any fucking platform there is, which is really cool.
Yeah. I mean, D&D's brain food, baby. Flavor matters most.
And you're not wrong as well. And I also love the concept of, releasing a bunch of spells, bunch of character ideas, bunch of items and stuff. Something that I imagine for both DMs and players will be super, super helpful. Do you intend to continue the Shitty Not Compendium saga? Is there going to be a Shitty Not Compendium 2? Electric Boogaloo?
Maybe I could totally see it happening. Definitely, yeah. Volume 2. Who knows? Maybe people will have been tired of that format by then. Maybe people will like it a lot. I don't know. But whatever the future holds, I have no idea.
I'm a fan of it.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to say, it's been such a pleasure talking to you today and getting to know you a little bit more. I already knew you were a badass person just from the incredible ideas that you come up with and from the amazing podcast that you run and work on and are a part of. But let me just tell you, this conversation has been so enlightening. You are such an enriching member of this community, and I feel so close to you right now. And I feel like you are an absolute badass. So just want to say, anyone who hasn't gone and checked out Roleplaying and Rollplaying.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Or Sam specifically, please go and do so. Sam, over to you if you'd like to, shout any stuff out or let people know where they can find the Kickstarter and things like that. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we are at our Roleplaying. That's ROLL playing. It's a little play on words, haha. that's where you can find us on Twitter. You can find me on Twitter at Sam Comerford 24 if you want. I rarely post there, but when I do, it's some crackhead shit. So I don't know if you're into that, check it out. But then we've got a podcast on Spotify that's pretty cool, I think, in my unbiased opinion. And then the Kickstarter is on our Twitter page as well, and all that's on our website, which is www.roleplaying.com, which is a cool website because I made it.
It's actually a really easy to navigate website. I actually really do like it.
Thank you. Yeah, WordPress is the best.
I was gonna say, and dark theme. Yo, shout out to dark theme.
Oh my god, yes.
Amazing. So we're Homie and the Dude. We're father and son team. We do a D&D and MMA podcast. We also do MMA live streams. We will be doing a D&D stream starting next year. But for the time being, check out our amazing NPCs. We just released our Mafia pack, which is plug and play. You get a Rakshasa Mafia Don, you get a Hill Giant Muscle, you get an Arcanoloth Consigliere, a bunch of different things for you to check out and try. So if you guys get a chance to check those out, please do. And all of those characters will be in the world that we will be playing in the stream as well. So you will get to see all of them in action next year when we do start the stream. But otherwise, guys, this has been Homie and the Dude, the father and son TTRPG and MMA podcast. Thank you so much for watching. Hit us with the Holy Trinity. Like and follow on Facebook. Subscribe on YouTube. Follow on Twitter. The Holy Trinity. Hit us up with it. Other than that, thank you so much, Sam. It's been an absolute honor.
Thanks, Sam.
It's been a pleasure to be here.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching Homie and the Dude today. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit us with the Holy Trinity. Go follow us on Twitter, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and like the Facebook. It's the best way that you can help us out at the moment. Hope you have an awesome day. Thanks for watching, guys.